Welcome to Transformative Principal. This is a special episode. I've been on a few podcasts lately, and this one I thought was really good and very timely for my audience specifically. So I was on the Planning Period podcast, and I was also on the Leaders of Learning podcast. And so there are links to those in the show notes at transformativeprincipal.org. So go check those two podcasts out. And then this one was on the PrincipalPLN podcast, which I've been on a couple times before, and would love to have you listen to that as well. But I'm including that as part of this podcast. So check out the show notes for those other two, and check out this one. And in this one with Spike Cook, I talk a lot about the masterminds and how powerful that is for the people that I'm working with. So I go more into depth on this. And so if you're interested in that, please check out transformativeprincipal.org/mastermind, and you can give me a call and we can talk about you being a part of the mastermind as well. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.
Okay, welcome to the Principal PLN, episode number 94. I'm here with Jethro Jones, who is the creator of one of the most awesome podcasts out there, the Transformative Principal. He does so much stuff throughout the state of Alaska, throughout the world at this point. And I am really excited to be here with Jethro this afternoon. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. It's exciting to be on your podcast.
No problem. I'm sorry you got stuck with me. You know, Jessica had something else going on, and Teresa was at a basketball game with her kids. So, yeah, you kind of got stuck with me.
Well, you know, it's a busy time of year, so I get that.
Yeah. So, well, I'm really excited to talk with you today because it's like the tables are turned, because last time I talked with you, I was on your podcast, and you were the one asking all the questions. So today I'm excited because I get a chance to ask you a bunch of questions.
That's right. And for those of you who are listening at home, the great Spike Cook interview will be coming out pretty soon here. And the actual date that it's coming out is April 1st, April Fool's Day even.
Oh, great.
So no pun intended, but
yeah,
there's a pun in there somewhere.
Yeah, there is. Definitely. So, well, let's bring everybody in the Principal PLN world up to speed on your progress over the last couple of years, because it's been a while since you've been on the show. So, I guess talk to us a little bit about what are you up to now? Where you are with your job and career and everything.
Yeah. So I took a new job up in Fairbanks, Alaska at a middle school, and doing some awesome things up here that I'm really excited about and very grateful for. And it's been a wonderful move. We were in Kodiak, Alaska before, and man, I'm thinking the last time that I was on your podcast, though, I think I was still an assistant principal down in Utah. Is that right?
That is right. And you were talking about, a couple of different, ideas that you had at the time. And I think it was right before or right after you had taken a road trip up there, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that could be.
So it definitely has been a few years. So, yeah. So what's what's education like up in Alaska now that you've had two different opportunities in two different settings? What are your, what is your, feelings about the progress that's being made up there?
Well, it's really interesting because down in the lower 48, there was this tremendous pressure on, the Common Core state standards and standardized testing, and everybody, when I was down in the lower 48, was just getting started with the PARC and the other, whatever they're called, tests that thankfully I don't even know about now. And there was just all this like pressure around that, we, of course, we put that on ourselves, but then we also we also make it worse than it has to be. And coming up here, there's just not that same kind of pressure. And so, in a lot of ways, education up here is still the Wild West. Districts are very far apart from each other in some areas. Moving from my district in Kodiak to the district in Fairbanks, I was going back 10 years, and it was just crazy that I'm having to re-talk about these things that I haven't talked about for years, like standards-based grading, for example. And then in other areas, this district is way farther ahead. Like, we have a whole BYOD process set up. My school's a BYOD school, and kids bring their devices and use them in school and all that. And there's just a lot of differences. The districts are much more independently run up here than they were down in the lower 48, in my experience. So, the two districts that I was in the lower 48, they were all doing pretty much the same kind of thing. So there wasn't too much that was making them stand out. Here, there's a lot of differences. I think the biggest thing is that the things that I've been trying to do for my whole career around personalizing the school experience for each individual student. A number of years ago on my podcast, I talked to somebody about creating an individualized learning plan for every single student, and how we really needed to pay that much attention to every kid to make their learning unique to them. And here in my district, that's the big push, and that's what they're really focusing on. And I feel like all the things that I've gotten in trouble for throughout my whole career, I'm actually being told to do right now. And it's like, this is great. Sign me up. I love it.
Yeah, that's what, as you're talking, I'm thinking, especially like for our listeners, right? So say you're an aspiring administrator or even a current administrator, right? And a position opens up in Alaska, and you're like, listen, I want to go take a drive or fly up there and give it a shot, right? So my sense, though, is listening to what you said, like if you came in with, we're going to be, I'm just theorizing, because this is kind of how we're all being, sort of trained down here, data-based decision-making, looking at our park scores, looking at, areas to improve school improvement plans, close reading, Common Core state standards, in every grade and every lesson. What's the interview committee going to say?
Yeah. We look at, data and things like that. It's a little bit different because we've had 3 different state standardized tests over the last 4 years. And so that makes it a little bit challenging. And so it's tough to say, this is what the data is saying when it's the state data, because you can't really compare it to previous years. So, for our district, we're really looking at a lot of personalized learning, and we're doing amazing things up here with that. And, just as a side note, there are currently positions available in my district right now for principals and for an assistant superintendent. And so there's a lot of opportunity here that still exists. And so it's a different way of life, and it's a different thing, but it's a lot of fun. And let me just tell you, Spike, one of the best parts is our summers. We do not have full year contracts. And so we get to be done before Memorial Day and then start at the beginning of August. And so pretty much all of June and July are off. And that's very much a cultural thing up here, that the summers are times when people do a lot of subsistence fishing and hunting. And so that's an important thing culturally. Even if you're not from here, that's still something that you need to be aware of and pay attention to, and just a very unique way to do it. So it's really cool.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you brought that up, because as you're speaking, again, I'm thinking, this is a great example of why you need to know your climate and culture. If you're an aspiring administrator or you're an administrator looking, in a district or another state or whatever, because you have to really be able to understand, what that is. and really do your homework and figure out and then as a leader too, are you going to be the kind of person that said, well, I'm just going to come with my knowledge and my skill set, and this is how things are going to go? Or am I going to understand the climate and culture, work within it, and like you said, even learn to say, wow, this is great. I'm going to be trying some things out that I never thought I'd be able to do.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's happened a lot for me. And, really trying to like get into the culture of where I'm at and understand what makes the local people here tick. And then we've got a big military installation right next to us that feeds about half of our students. And so, I need to understand that military culture as well and understand things like chain of command and how you deal with things like that. And it's really fascinating to know that like there are different ways that different people do things. And one of the things that I, talk about a lot is that as the school principal, your job is to meet the needs of so many different people. Oftentimes those needs are completely conflicting. And so, like the parent wants there to be zero consequences for their child because they don't believe the child did anything wrong. And on the other hand, we have a Native Alaskan culture here that believes in things like restorative circles and making things whole again. And so you have to take those things into consideration. So one parent could say, well, I'm a helicopter parent. My kids shouldn't be in trouble because they didn't do anything wrong. And the other parent that was involved in that situation says, well, I need these two to reconcile. And that's what really matters. So it's a really interesting take on dealing with so many different stakeholders.
Wait, you're telling me that you have parents up there who think that their child does no wrong? That's just been like my...
Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. Yeah. And it's unfortunate. And, it's kind of something that, that I've been dealing with over the last couple of weeks, like some really, hot button issues happening at the school. And, I even did a, sort of a blog post about this, cause, with the shooters, in the school and safety and things like that, we had an experience right before, the winter break, and it was unfortunate, and it, cause it was much ado about nothing. And, what I walked away from that was like, immediately everyone thought we were wrong. We didn't inform people in the right way and the right timing and all of this. And since that time, I've dealt with some other, discipline issues that have risen to the, like the board hearings and things like that. And, you have parents that are literally saying like, this is not my son. This is not my family, and, obviously we're not detectives, but we do our due diligence, and it's a shame because that the message that's being sent is not of the like I really believe in the prepare your child for the path, not the path for your child.
Yeah, absolutely. In addition to those tragic events, what we're also dealing with here in Alaska is very high rates of child abuse, very high rates of suicidal ideation and suicide. And just in our district, we've had 2 high school students this school year already take their lives, and had a number of those issues at our school. And, this is like, it's one thing for us to just have all the normal struggles, but and I really do believe that this is a life and death situation of how we run our schools. It is not just, it's not just about academics. There's a lot that we do actively to prevent kids from taking their lives. We get a lot of reports of suicidal ideation, and you have to respond to that. And the way that we approach that at my school is that we overreact, which means that we make sure that kid knows all the resources, make sure the parents know all the resources, make sure they have all the support that they need. And then we overreact, and then we under sensationalize. So,
wow, I like that.
Yeah. It's powerful.
I like that. Yeah.
So I learned that from my previous superintendent, and in that district, there hadn't been a suicide of a school-age child in over 9 years since he was the superintendent, and that was his philosophy, and that was how he did it, and that's exactly what needs to happen. Nobody else needs to know that these kids are having these thoughts besides those who can actually do something about it, their parents, and getting them connected to the right services. And that approach, it just is so important because it really is life and death. And if these kids come to school and feel like their teachers hate them or they can't be successful or they're failing every class, it just makes them that much more at risk to do something to harm themselves. And, for a kid to feel like life is that hopeless when they're just in middle school or high school, Spike, it just breaks my heart.
Yeah, it does. So could you take us through a typical day, in a principal up in Alaska? Not saying that you're the typical principal because we know you're not. We all read your blogs and your tweets and things like that. But what's a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, so in this district, our middle schools start at 9:30, which is amazing. Being able to start so late in the day, those kids are able to get a good night's rest, hopefully.
Yeah.
and that's a big deal. So for me, with all the transformative principal stuff that I'm doing, my day usually starts at about 5 a.m. and I get up in between 5 and 7. I'm doing work on that. I'm having my mastermind meetings, which are really powerful. If anybody's interested in that, go to transformativeprincipal.org/mastermind. And you can learn more about these group coaching sessions that just take people to a whole new level of leadership in their schools. And we may talk more about that in a minute, but.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. I do that from 5 to 7 in the morning. And then 7 to 8, I'm helping my kids get ready for school and getting ready myself. And then I head into work, and like principals everywhere, I think you head in and, as Jeff Zool mentioned on your podcast last week, you walk in the door and it's like you're shot from a cannon, and that's things are just thrown at you all day long. And one of the things that I've really worked on this year after reading a book called The One Thing is I've determined that the one thing that I can do that will make everything else easier or unnecessary and help deal with that onslaught of everything that comes is to be coaching my teachers. So every day before lunch between 9:30 and 11:30 or 12, when we have lunch, I am working with teachers, coaching them in their classrooms, observing or one-on-one coaching with them or having meetings with them, things like that. That's my prime time, and that's where my most important work happens. And I do that every single day that I possibly can. And so a lot of times when there are student issues during that time, they just wait until lunchtime when I can get to them then. And what I've seen with that, Spike, is that the teacher, what I'm really doing is I'm devoting my best self to my teachers and helping them become the best that they can be and really giving them the support that they need. And my assistant principal and I both work together on that. And so most of our mornings are spent doing that. And I've seen such great results from that. It is just unbelievable. My expectation for my teachers this year was to do one personalized learning lesson or unit in their class each quarter. And they have just taken it and run with it. And it is just unbelievable how far they've gone with me being able to be there and give them support day in and day out. And then all the other stuff that you deal with as a principal, that happens from at lunch until the end of the day. And, I try really hard to get out a decent hour. Doesn't always work, but try really hard to make sure that that's happening. And you just deal with the onslaught at that point. But I don't check my email till after lunch each day, which sometimes I miss out on things, but that's all right.
So talk to us a little bit about, the book is called The One Thing. This was what was one of the things that inspired you, no pun intended, but to devote those 2 to 2.5 hours of instruction.
Yep, that's right. So the One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, and it's about business. But I like to read a lot of business books because I think they make sense in education also. Sure. And they talk about your most important stuff, whatever it is. You do that first. You make that your priority. You don't check email or tweets or anything like that until you get that important work done. And that's really what it's all about. If you take a bunch of dominoes, and a domino can knock over something that is 1.5 times itself in size, so, and weight and everything. So you can start with a really tiny domino that's very small, and you can end up knocking over a huge domino that could be the size of the Empire State Building in only 29 dominoes. And so that exponential idea that if you do the little thing that's most important, then it'll knock everything else down and make everything else easier. So what do I see? Because I'm in classrooms for 2 hours a day, I see a result or a reduction in discipline issues. I see teachers who aren't coming and asking me things all throughout the day because I'm spending that time with them in the morning. I see parent issues that are resolved before they happen because I'm out in the classrooms dealing with things as well. And it just makes all those other things that keep us from doing the important work, it makes it so that those don't show up very much anymore because I'm putting my priorities where they're supposed to be, which is in the classrooms helping teachers. Now, for me, that's what works for me. That may not be the same for everybody. And I realize that, and that's an important thing to recognize because it doesn't have to be the same for everybody. So, at my school, that may be the most important thing. At another school, something else could be the one thing that you really have to be focusing on. And so really it's about figuring out what your one thing is and then what your domino is that's going to knock everything else down and use that to start changing your life. So while
I love that. You know what?
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. No, go ahead.
So while that's the work domino, there's actually another domino that is even more important, which sounds kind of crazy, but this has really impacted me way more, which has led to an increase in downloads of my podcast, led to getting great guests on my podcast, led to getting more people to sign up for the mastermind, and led to me being able to do a lot more stuff that I need to do to build that. And that one thing is going to bed with my wife at the same time every night, which I used to. She would go to bed at 10 o'clock, and then I'd stay up till midnight or 1 getting work done because I always thought I didn't need as much time to sleep as everybody else. And then I'd get up at 5 and go at it again. And once I decided, I'm going to go to bed when she does, then I started being more productive in the morning. And then at New Year's, she said, well, I'm going to go to bed an hour earlier at 9 o'clock. And I was like, well, I can't do that. I've got too much stuff to do, quote unquote. And so I said, well, I'm going to do it anyway, because that's my one thing that I really need to do that makes everything else easier or unnecessary. So I started going to bed at 9 o'clock. And guess what, Spike? I got even more done.
Yes.
It's crazy, right?
It is. And, this couldn't come at a better time. Sometimes I believe the universe just sends you messages, of course, especially when you're tuned into things, because right now we're in our pre-phase for the school improvement process. And, it's something that I really believe in, that we take the months of February, March, April, May, while we still have the staff and we start planning for next year. Yeah, part of it is, we're required to through, because we're a focus school through the, with our state assessments and things like that. And some of the terminology has changed, but, I believe in it. It's basically, you have to analyze, where you are, celebrate the things that are going well, and work on the things that need improvement. So, and, we've known each other for a number of years, and I'm always thinking about the big things. I'm always thinking about, being a Netflix and not a Blockbuster, to use, Eric Scheninger's latest post, or, really trying to create that 21st century learning environment, that's, the Jetsons, the spaceships, we want to be out there and doing things, differently. And what I've learned about over, the last few years at the school that I'm at is that we're not ready for that, and so when we did some work, in January, for our school improvement process, we, get teachers in groups and, basically you could do it either way. You're going to give them stickies or you do the placemats and, just identify 3 or 4 things that are, that are problematic in the school. And then as a group decide what are the 2 or 3 things within that, in that small group that you have to focus on. And then you open it up to the large group and, by and large, you're going to find those themes that are going to come out. And I've done this, probably the last 6 years, and, what really came to light at this school at this moment is that the teachers really want to work on the small things. They want to work on the policies, the procedures, so that everybody's on the same page, making sure the hallways, are taken care of, the discipline, that kind of stuff. And, I really had to take a step back and think, wow, like this is not the direction that I thought we needed to go in. I misread the organization. And, what I found is that we're going to focus on these little things. So I'm going to check this book out. I mean, it sounds like, it's something that is right up my alley too, because, and I've had to talk to, because I have 3 VPs, and they feel the same way. Like, at this point, we really should be growing. We should be pushing the envelope, changing the schedule again, and because I've done a lot of change in the past 2 years I've been there. But I think for teachers, they need that consistency. Students need that consistency, and I don't know. I'm so sorry I went on that tangent, but it's just really something that I've been wrestling with. And I guess now I'm going to ask you to put your coaching hat on for a minute, because we are going to transition into that. So here I am as a principal. I'm signed up with you, and I just gave you all that stuff. How are you going to help me? How are you going to coach me? And how would you integrate the one thing into that discussion?
Well, I'm glad you asked for that, because I was just going to say, can I coach you a little bit on that? And the
Yes.
place that we want to start with that, Spike, is what is your vision for the school? Like what do you want the school to look like? Where do you want the school to be in 5 years? What does that look like to you?
So for me, I want it to be a true 21st century learning environment where, kids have access to technology, that they are taking challenging courses, that there is a plethora of choices for them to take, both online courses and in-person courses. And I'm looking for a safe environment, and I'm looking for the school to be viewed as, a growing, progressive, improvement-based school where the type of discussions that we're having now with assessment results has increased and has improved. Mm-hmm. And we've made some progress over the last few years with our student growth percentiles. But I'm hoping that we would be having a different discussion 5 years from now, where we're double, tripling our scores and things like that.
Cool. So what I'm hearing you say is that you want a very successful academically school with lots of access to technology and many challenging courses, both online and in person. Is that a fair short summary of what you're looking for?
Yes.
Okay. So what is the biggest thing that's standing in your way right now that is like just the enormous obstacle that's preventing it?
I would say that what's preventing it is probably like student discipline, hallway behavior, teachers' willingness to, to try new instructional, practices.
Okay, so you mentioned a whole bunch of things, Spike. Of those whole bunch of things, which one is the biggest one that you're most apprehensive and nervous about trying to overcome?
I would say probably right now it would be, the student behavior. And I'm not just talking about, office discipline referrals and things like that. I'm just talking about the overall, and you're in the middle school, student apathy, student, attitudes, attendance, things like that. I think that's what's holding us back.
Okay. So it's not so much the misbehavior, it's the lack of engagement or enrollment, as Seth Godin calls it, in the process of your school. Is that a fair summary?
I would say that's a fair summary.
Okay. So the thing that is really challenging about that is how do you change other people, right? That's the challenging part. And are you 6, 7, 8 or 7, 8?
6, 7, 8.
So at least you have them for 3 years. Like at my school, we've only got them for 2 years. So that's a big challenge because we got to get them, build trust quick, and then get them to buy into our process before they move on to the next school, which, in 3 years, that's still very challenging to make that happen. So
right.
If there was one thing that you could change between among the student apathy, like what would you see as the thing that would make that all be better? Like, what would that look like if the students were not apathetic anymore?
I think it would look like this, so I'm going in to do a walkthrough or an observation, and I would see kids engaged in the lesson, asking questions, up, moving around, doing things hands-on, things like that. I'd see their behavior in the hallways where, they're walking to the right, they're keeping their voices down, they're being respectful to the adults. Those are some of the things that I would look at. Yeah.
Okay. And so if it looks like that, how would that make you feel as you were walking through your building, experiencing those things?
It would make me feel tremendous, because, and I know that it's a matter of perception, because there's one of me and there's 1,100 kids, there's 120 staff. We have a really big organization. Mm-hmm. And there are times where I see just that. That's the thing. It's not that it's not there. There are times where I'm in the hallways and the kids they're doing exactly what we need them to do, and going to the lunchroom, they're doing exactly what they need to be doing, and they're in the classroom and they're engaged. But there are other times or I think what's most disappointing is that when I talk to teachers and I say, what are the things that we need to change here? It continues to come back to hallways, classroom behavior, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So how do the kids know what that behavior should look like?
Well, right now we use the PBIS or PBSIS program, where teachers are focusing on the positive things. We have 4 very basic school rules, and I don't think it's a high engagement, but we do, we do teach them what our expectations are in all the different areas. So how do you behave in the cafeteria? How do you, all these expectations are taught, at the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm. And how's that working out? Are you where you want to be yet?
No, not at all.
So that approach, while noble and appropriate and what every PBIS school teaches about, is that actually getting you to where you want to be?
Not right now.
Yeah. So now what we want to do, so we've established what the vision looks like, what the chasm is between you and where your vision wants to go. And now what we need to figure out is what action can you take such that by doing it will make everything else easier or unnecessary. And this is where the real challenge is, because right now you probably don't know what the answer to that question is, right?
No, I don't.
Yeah. And
because it can't be just me. Right. And that's what I've said, it can't be just me. It can't be just my vice principals. It can't be just the teachers. It can't be just the kid. There's so many layers to it. You're right. But there's probably one thing that we could all, or that could start. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm looking for answers and wanting to involve, all of our key stakeholders in this process, because it's something that I'm really passionate about. I really want to fix. I don't want to be because I feel like, I feel bad for the staff sometimes, because many of them, since the building opened, will tell me that these are the same discussions that they've been having. And I want to be able to be the one that helps them to say, okay, well, you know what? At least we're not having that conversation anymore. We've solved this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that really is the power in figuring out what the one thing is that when you do that, and you do that every single day, then you have that great impact on the kids. I mean, the reality is you're not going to have kids that are doing well academically if they're not engaged to begin with, right?
Correct.
Like it's impossible for a kid to do well academically and be totally apathetic. That's just not going to happen. So you've got to start doing things to get you to that point. So what is in your mind right now the one thing that you could do such that by doing it would make it easier for those kids to be engaged in what they're doing at school?
The one thing that I could do, like on Monday morning.
Yep.
That's a good question. I don't know if I know the answer to that right now.
Great. So it's okay to not know the answer, right? Because if you knew the answer already, you'd be doing it.
Right.
So,
I mean, right. I can tell you what I've been doing, what I've tried. I've tried this, I've tried that,
mm-hmm.
There are days where I've because I was talking with you before, like when I was, interviewed on your podcast, and I've talked about this a lot, about the Sam's Time Tracker program that I'm going through. There's been some days where I've just said to my time coach that I am canceling everything for today, and I am going to be out in the hallways observing. I want to be at key places. I want to be, working with teachers and security guards and vice principals to really continue to understand this supposed mammoth, cultural shift that needs to happen in our school. Mm-hmm. Because the theory is it's pretty clear. It's like, kids are, out in the hall misbehaving or, being kids basically. How likely is it that they're going to then turn that off, get in and into their class and start learning algebra in a high, with a high engagement, So yeah, exactly. It's about, not only raising that rigor in the classroom, but just raising that rigor, everywhere, buses, the walk-in, in the hallways, in the cafeteria,
Yeah. And there are some things also, Spike, where, kids are human beings. For example, every school I've been at, there's been somebody complaining about the noise level in the cafeteria. And I'm like, when was the last time you went to a restaurant that was not a fancy restaurant with lots of booths and, really expensive food? When's the last time you went to a place whose whole sole purpose was to just get people in, get them a bunch of food, and then move them along very quickly? That's what our cafeterias are like, right? So a McDonald's, right, a Golden Corral, some other buffet kind of place. What's the noise level like in those places, Spike?
Right.
It's loud.
It's loud. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's the environment that our kids are in. That's the environment that we can see out in the real world. So why are we been out of shape when the noise level is high in there? Because the noise level is high everywhere. You have a large group of people getting their food quickly and then sitting down and eating with their friends and acquaintances and family and things like that. So that's an area where, I'm not going to not going to lose my mind because it's loud in the cafeteria. I would expect it to be loud in the cafeteria. I grew up in a family with 7 kids. Dinner was always loud. That's just all there is to it. So like, let's just move on from that problem and recognize this is okay. And let's move on. And we don't need to stress about that. So I asked you, what's the one thing that you could start doing that would make it easier for kids to be engaged in their learning? And you said you don't know. So if you did know, what would that look like to you?
I would think like the one thing that I could do would probably be more to be more visible and engaged in the classrooms themselves, modeling that what I'm looking for.
Yeah. And is that going to happen? Like you're going to do this and then tomorrow you're going to do this on Monday and then on Tuesday, all of a sudden kids are going to be perfect? No,
not at all.
No,
so it sounds like what you're saying is, what you do is you set upon, whatever it is, that goal. So if we were having this coaching discussion, you would say, okay, well then if that's what you're saying, you want to be in there to either 1, figure out what's going on, or 2, model, or 3, try to help out with the engagement in the struggling areas, then you need to carve out time and you need to make that your priority. And then that is what you do every day, day in and day out during that time, right? You make it sacred. And then I'm just thinking, I don't know, but then you and I would touch base in, either a couple days or a couple weeks. And then we'd start to kind of report out on that and how would it be going? Is that a little bit about what you do?
Yep, exactly. So let me break this down into a super quick examination of that. I had somebody join my mastermind on January 2nd, and around February 4th or 5th or so, he needed to give a presentation to his school board about the direction of the school, kind of like a strategic planning warm-up kind of session, right? And so he joined the mastermind, and we talked about this exact thing. And we had a very similar conversation to you. And I said, so what's the one thing that you could do that would make it easier for you to get there? And so we're talking about a big, huge presentation about the whole overview of the school, where it's heading. That wasn't like hour-long presentation at least. And what's the one thing he could do? The one thing he chose to do was to spend 15 minutes one day each week for the next week, just writing out his vision, putting it on paper, because he didn't have that. And so that was his one thing. So for that week, he did that for 15 minutes each day. That's like no time, Spike. That's not a big deal. But what that allowed him to do was to start figuring out what he really wanted, which meant that he started saying that in conversations more, which meant that he started getting people on board with the idea, which meant that he was able to articulate it and see where the holes were. And then, time went by, and he did that for a week. And then his next goal was to do that visually so that he could draw and make images to represent what he was hoping for. And then by the time that month went by, he was able to present to his school board exactly what his vision was in an amazing presentation that was just inspiring. After listening to him do the practice with me before he met with the board, I wanted to go to his school. That's how powerful that was. And so that started with him doing something for 15 minutes each day. And so for you, like, I'm not sure what your daily schedule is, that much better, but if you're not doing the thing that you think is the one thing, which you said was being in your classrooms and modeling it, and if you're not doing that yet, that's going to take you some time to get up to that point. And if you start with just 15 minutes that you're going to go in and you're going to say to an apathetic kid, this is what I want your learning to look like, and then you model it, that may not be how you decide to do it. I'm just saying, for sake of the argument, if you do that for 15 minutes every day, that's going to pay some dividends later on down the line. It's not going to happen right that minute, but if it's really something that will make things change, then you'll be able to see it. Now, this is exactly what it was for me. I started out with an hour each day coaching my teachers at different times throughout the day. I ended up expanding that time over time once I got more used to it, because there's still all this other stuff that we need to do. But I expanded that time to 2 to 2.5 hours, depending on our daily schedule, so that now that's really easy for me. That's blocked off in my calendar. My secretary knows that nobody gets my time during that time unless it's a teacher that I'm coaching. And that's just how it works. Now it makes total sense that that's what I do every morning. And when I'm not doing that, then there's something weird going on or something not right going on. And it really quickly changes what your focus is. So if that's your one thing, Spike, that you want to be in classrooms modeling, how much time do you want to be in classrooms modeling each day?
Well, like you said, I think I would probably start out with, something achievable, like, 15 minutes or half an hour, put that into place, and then, reevaluate it, over the course of like a week, or like you said, probably maybe sometimes even shorter, and then start to expand that out. And then also, then I'm modeling that then for the vice principals and guidance counselors, because I'm trying to say, like, whatever it is that you value the most, then you need to make that part of your schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. And so by time blocking it and making it something that you're really going to put the time and energy into, and making sure that that time is sacred, that's when you really make an impact, because your actions speak a lot louder than your words. So if the lunchroom behavior is an issue in your school and you want that to change, and the one thing you can do to make that change is to be down there, then you be down there and you make sure that that happens. And, whatever your one thing is, when you put the emphasis and focus on that, then amazing things start to happen. So what we do in the mastermind is we go through this, a similar coaching process, and there's more people. So we give and take a little bit more than just one-on-one, and we figure out what our goals are at the end of the session. We set a goal each week, and then we check in every week and say, how did you do with that? Did you meet that? Did you not? What did you struggle with? And how can you get better in that area, so that the next time you've got this goal that is attainable and powerful, and also makes you a little bit scared and pushes you to move all the way down.
Good. I'm glad. And I'm glad that you're doing that, because I want, like, especially for our listeners to hear, having that conversation with you. And I, like I said, I've known you for a while, and you certainly help to bring that out, but you have to show some vulnerability too. Mm-hmm. It's not easy for me to say, what are the things that, we are struggling with the most, or, and put that out, over a podcast or whatever, because not everybody, always looks at that as the most positive thing. But I think the way that you do it, and obviously it's not through an entire podcast, you're in small groups, you're building that trust, and
it's private.
One, it's private. Yeah. That's really powerful, because I like what you say in your, and I do recommend everybody to check out transformativeprincipal.org, /mastermind. Like you say, I help you lead, not just run from one fire to the next. And I think leadership is really, that's really what, if you let it, that's what it will certainly become. So how does somebody go about signing up for that? Or do you, how does the whole process work?
Well, really, it's about making sure that we're going to be a good fit. Like, if we talk on the phone for 15 minutes and it's super awkward and uncomfortable, then it's not going to work. And so I want to make sure that you're comfortable with me, that I'm comfortable with you. So the first step is to schedule a call with me that you can do at that website, transformativeprincipal.org /mastermind. You can go there, you can click schedule a call with Jethro, and then we'll get on the phone and talk and make sure that it's a good fit. If it is, and if I think the mastermind can help you achieve what you're looking for, then I'll invite you to be part of it. And there have been people who for whom it hasn't worked, but everybody who said, yeah, this is something that I want and need, and I believe we can meet that. It's been an amazing experience. We've had principals that have gone on to get promoted to district level callings, principals that have left the profession to be a consultant, which has been their dream for years, people that have gotten awards and promotions and moved to other positions that were better for them. All this kind of stuff. It really is powerful when you spend your time with the people that are going to make you better. And so there's a Jim Rohn quote that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And in that group of those in the mastermind, we are all pushing each other to be better. In fact, earlier this year, there was a principal who had a very controversial thing happen that made it all the way to the front page of Fox News. And he, I believe, was able to manage that because he had a support group that was saying, like, he had his district support and that was great, but he also had other principals who've been through similar things telling him and giving him advice so that he wasn't just doing whatever the district leadership says. He was taking their advice, taking our advice, making the best decision, and that hit the front page, and then everything died down, and he managed it really, really well, communicated with his families appropriately, and it was a great experience to see him go through that pressure, that high pressure situation, and come out on top in the end. It was just super inspiring. And that, we never know when those things are going to happen. So
yeah,
it's
exactly.
good to have that network in place.
That's awesome. Well, listen, Jethro, this has been an awesome conversation, as it always is. And, I really appreciate the time that you've been able to spend, not only just a little bit of the coaching with me, but just being able to share your story, this story of the Alaskan, climate and culture, the school culture there. I think our listeners really got a chance to get a glimpse into that world. But as always, we always want to keep the conversation going. So how can we keep in touch with you and just let us know, the little things that maybe are going on right now that that may have been of interest to our listeners?
Yeah. So you can follow me on Twitter at Jethro Jones, but really I'm working on a big, huge goal right now, Spike, and it is to impact 100 million students by the year 2027. So if you're still listening to this, you've gotten something out of it. And so I'm going to invite you to help me make that impact by going to transformativeprincipal.org/impact. And there you can just answer my survey, which just asks how many kids you're going to impact. And I'm keeping a running total on that. And I want to tell you real quick where we're at, because I
see it.
I just gave a keynote.
Yeah.
So impacted a few more people. So right now we're at 29,000, and talk about having a big, huge goal and taking small steps to get there. And so,
wow.
I've got a long way to go, but if you're listening to this still, I'd love for you to go there and click on that link and fill out the short survey, and tell me how many you're impacting. That would be an honor to me, and I would greatly appreciate it. And I would thank you so much for that. So transformativeprincipal.org/impact. If you're driving right now, just remember that Transformative Principals make an impact, and you should be able to find it.
Yeah, we'll make sure to put that in the show notes too. Whether they're on the app or go to our blog, we'll have the link there. But yeah, it's his goal is to positively impact the lives of 100 million students through the work that he's doing with leaders around the world. It's not just a goal for him, but it's for all of us. And like I said, he's already impacted 29,018 kids, which is, one little step into a big, huge impact that's going to take years to do. But I love it. It's, I think that makes me think of that Siddhartha quote, "The 1,000-mile journey begins with one step."
Yeah. So the one thing that I'm doing to reach that I started when I started this goal was to go to bed at the same time as my wife each night. So I did that for 66 days. My next 66-day challenge is to eat healthy. And if I eat healthy and I go to bed on time, I'll have the energy to do the things that make an impact on other people. I'm starting with small stuff here, man. I mean, it's crazy. And yet 29,000 people have been impacted because I went to bed on time. How crazy is that?
That is crazy. Yeah. Well, I'm super excited, and I know that we'll be in touch, along this process. And, once again, everybody check out Jethro, on Twitter at Jethro Jones, and check out his website, transformativeprincipal.org. You can learn about his podcast, how to get rid of leadership isolation, and then, of course, the impact, which is huge. And definitely download his podcast, The Transformative Principal. He has over 214 shows out right now. There's been about 200,000 downloads. So it's super successful, and it's because, he's a guy that cares about making things better, is a great listener, and asks awesome questions. So I'm glad I was able to turn the table on him today. So thanks again, Jethro.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Okay. And, don't forget to follow us at PrincipalPLN. You can check out our blog, PrincipalPLN.com. On behalf of Jessica Johnson and Teresa Stagger, PrincipalPLN out.